You protected my children, even when no one asked you to.
No child should ever suffer because of war.
Then, you're our hero now.
In America and Britain, we love underdog stories. The quiet guy nobody sees who becomes the hero when it counts. But this one happened light years away, and it still hits harder than most Earth legends. He was nobody, just a human mopping floors in a glittering alien palace. The blue-skinned nobles walked past him like he was empty air. No name, no face, no worth. Then assassins came for the Empress's children, and the only person standing between those kids and death was the forgotten floor mopper. But the truth behind this will shock you. First, how a man with 0 rank knew every secret tunnel better than the royal guards. Second, the moment the most powerful empress in 3 star systems dropped her pride for a human servant. And third, the quiet choice he made that forced an entire empire to finally see humans as equals. Let me show you exactly how this happened. He was nobody. Just a human mopping floors in a huge alien palace. No one said his name. No one looked at his face. The aliens walked past him like he was empty air. But one terrible night, assassins came for the Empress's children, and the only person who stood between those kids and death was the forgotten floor mopper. That night changed everything. What really happened inside those dark palace halls will shock you. First, how a man with 0 power knew every secret tunnel better than the royal guards. Second, the moment the Empress herself dropped to her knees in front of a human servant. And third, the quiet choice he made that forced an entire empire to see humans in a new light. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The palace of the Veyari Empire rose like a mountain of glass and silver under twin moons. Its halls stretched for miles. Soft blue lights glowed on the walls. Soft music played from nowhere. The air smelled clean and sweet. This was the home of Empress Lyra, the most powerful ruler in 3 star systems. Deep inside the lowest levels of that shining palace walked a human named Kale. Kale was not a soldier. He was not a pilot. He was not even a cook. He was a cleaner. Every morning before the suns rose, he filled his bucket with water. He pushed his mop across endless white floors. He scrubbed until the stone shone. The Veyari nobles stepped around him without a word. To them, he was furniture that moved. Kale never complained. He kept his head down. He did his work. But while he mopped, his eyes never stopped watching. He learned every door. He learned every service tunnel. He learned which wall panels opened with a soft push. He learned the quiet paths the servants used when the High Lords walked by. After 3 long years, Kale knew the palace better than most of the royal guards. The other servants liked him. He shared his small food packs. He fixed broken cleaning machines with clever human tricks. But the high-born Veyari never saw him. Their blue skin glowed under the lights. Their long silver hair floated behind them. They spoke in soft musical voices about trade and power. Kale was less than dust to them. One quiet evening, the palace felt different. The usual soft music was gone. Guards stood thicker at every corner. Kale noticed the change while he cleaned the long corridor near the royal wing. Something heavy sat in the air. He kept mopping anyway. It was not his place to ask questions. Far above him, in the golden nursery, the 2 young children of the Empress slept. Little Princess Sira was 7. Her brother Prince Tavan was 5. Both had soft blue skin and bright white hair like their mother. They were the future of the empire. The Empress loved them more than her own life. Empress Lyra stood by their beds that night. She was tall and graceful. Her silver armor shone even in the soft light. Her face was calm, but her hands stayed tight. Reports had come. Dark ships had been seen near the outer moons. Old enemies still hated the Veyari throne. She kissed her children's foreheads and left extra guards at the door. Kale finished the corridor and moved to the side halls. He wrung his mop and listened. Boots marched somewhere far away. Radios crackled. He felt the hairs on his neck rise. Humans had always been good at sensing danger. That gift had kept his people alive on a hard world long before they reached the stars. He pushed his cart into a small service alcove and waited. The lights flickered once. Then the power in that wing died. Darkness swallowed the hall. Red emergency lights kicked on, painting everything the color of blood. Alarms began to wail, long and low. Cale's heart kicked hard against his ribs. This was no drill. Heavy boots pounded the floor, not the clean steps of palace guards. These were harder, faster, meaner. Dark shapes in black armor rushed past his hiding place. Their helmets glowed faint green. They carried long rifles that hummed with power. Assassins. Real ones. Cale pressed himself against the wall and stayed silent. He counted 6 of them. Then 8. Then more. They moved like they knew the layout. Someone had sold the palace secrets. They headed straight for the royal nursery. The first screams came from the guard post. Short and sharp. Then silence. Cale's blood turned cold. He knew those children. He had cleaned their playroom many times. He had once found a lost toy under a chair and placed it gently back on the shelf. Little Sira had smiled at him once. Just once. That smile stayed in his mind. He could run. He could hide in the deep tunnels until the fighting ended. No one would blame a cleaner for staying alive. The smart move was to disappear. Cale looked at his mop. Then he looked at the dark hall where the killers had gone. He set the mop down quietly. He pulled a heavy metal tool from his cart, the kind used to open stuck floor panels. It felt solid in his hand. Not a real weapon, but better than nothing. He slipped into a narrow service tunnel only the cleaners used. The tunnel ran behind the walls of the royal wing. Cale had walked it 100 times in the dark. He knew every turn by feel. His feet made no sound. His breathing stayed slow and steady. Through small vents, he heard more fighting. Palace guards shouted. Guns cracked. The smell of burnt air drifted inches. The assassins were good. Too good. They cut through the outer guards like paper. Cale reached a grate that opened near the nursery hallway. He peered through. 3 dark figures stood over fallen Vayari soldiers. One assassin raised hand scanner toward the nursery door. The lock glowed red and began to melt. Inside those rooms slept 2 children who had never hurt anyone. Cale's jaw tightened. He had spent years being nobody. Years of silence. Years of lowered eyes. But those kids were still kids. And right now the only person who knew a way into that nursery without using the main door was the human who mopped the floors. He moved deeper into the wall. His mind raced through every path he had ever cleaned. There was a maintenance hatch under the nursery floor. It led to the old air system. Most guards had forgotten it existed. Cale had cleaned the dust out of it last winter. He found the hatch in the dark by touch alone. The metal was cold. He turned the locks with practiced hands. The hatch opened with a soft sigh. Warm air from the nursery drifted down. He climbed up into the soft carpet of the children's playroom. The room was quiet. Nightlights glowed pale blue. Toys lay scattered on the floor. Through the open bedroom door, he saw 2 small shapes under white blankets. Princess Sira and Prince Tavan still slept, unaware that death was melting the lock outside. Cale crossed the room on silent feet. He gently shook the little girl's shoulder. Her eyes opened, wide and scared. He put a finger to his lips. SHH. It's okay. We have to go. Quiet now. The boy woke next. Both children stared at the dirty human in their room. They had seen him cleaning before, but never like this. Cale kept his voice soft and calm, the way humans spoke to scared animals back on Earth. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, he whispered. Hold my hands. No sound. Sira took one hand. Taven took the other. Their small blue fingers felt warm and fragile. Kale led them back to the open hatch. He lowered the boy first, then the girl. He climbed down last and pulled the hatch shut just as the nursery door exploded inward with a flash of white light. Above them, heavy boots entered the room. Angry alien voices cursed. Scanners swept the empty beds. Kale held the children close in the dark tunnel and waited. His heart hammered so hard he thought the assassins would hear it. The scanners moved away. The killers left to search other rooms. Kale let out a slow breath. The children clung to him. Little Taven's eyes shone with tears, but he made no sound. Sira whispered, "Are you the floor man?" Kale almost smiled. "Yeah, I'm the floor man. And tonight the floor man is getting you out of here." He led them through the narrow tunnels he knew by heart. Left at the water pipes. Right at the old power junction. Down a long slope that smelled of metal and dust. The children followed without question. They trusted the quiet human who had always been kind. Behind them, the palace shook with more explosions. Sirens screamed. The attack was bigger than anyone had feared. Whole wings of the palace were falling to the black-armored killers. Kale kept moving. He had one goal now. Get the children to the deep safe room that only a handful of people knew about. The room sat under the old foundation, behind 3 hidden doors. Empress Lyra had shown it to her most trusted captains years ago. Kale had found it while chasing a broken cleaning drone. They reached the first hidden door. Kale pressed the right sequence on a dirty panel. The wall slid open. Cool air flowed out. He ushered the children inside and sealed the door behind them. One more long tunnel. One more heavy door. Then they would be safe. Halfway down that final tunnel, a shadow stepped out of a side passage. An assassin. Tall. Black-armored. Green helmet lights. The killer had found the service routes too. He raised his rifle toward the human and the 2 small shapes behind him. Kale pushed the children behind a thick pipe. He had no gun, only the metal tool in his hand, and 3 years of knowing every inch of these walls. The assassin fired. Red energy burned past Kale's shoulder and scorched the metal. Pain flared hot. Kale did not stop. He slammed his shoulder into a loose panel he had fixed many times. The panel fell. Thick white cleaning foam sprayed hard into the assassin's helmet. The killer staggered, blind for a second. Kale moved fast. He swung the heavy tool with all the strength of a man who had scrubbed floors for years. The tool cracked against the assassin's knee joint. The armored figure dropped with a sharp cry. Kale hit him again across the helmet. The green lights died. The body went still. Kale stood over him, breathing hard, blood running down his arm. The children stared with huge eyes. He turned to them and forced a calm voice. "It's okay. We're almost there. Just a little farther." They reached the final door. Kale entered the code he had memorized long ago. The thick metal slid open. Soft lights came on inside a small safe room with water, food packs, and a sealed communication panel. He gently pushed the children inside. "Stay here," he said. "Do not open this door for anyone except your mother. Understand?" Sira nodded. Taven grabbed Kale's sleeve. "Are you coming back?" Kale looked at the small blue hand holding his dirty shirt. For the first time in years, someone needed him. Really needed him. He ruffled the boy's white hair carefully. "I'll try. Lock the door when I leave." He stepped back into the tunnel and sealed them inches. The lock light turned green. "Safe." Kale leaned against the wall for a moment. His arm burned. Blood dripped onto the floor he used to keep clean. Above him the palace still fought and burned. He could run now. He could hide until morning. He had done the important part. The children lived. But the Empress was still up there somewhere, and the assassins were still hunting. Kale looked at the metal tool in his hand, now stained dark. He was still just a cleaner. Still nobody. Yet something had changed inside his chest. He could not walk away while the fight continued. He turned back toward the upper levels, toward the smoke and the fire and the screaming. The human who mopped floors began to climb. The real battle for the palace was only beginning, and the man no one ever noticed was about to become the most important person in the empire. Kale climbed through the dark service tunnels with blood running down his arm. The pain burned, but he kept moving. Above him the palace shook with heavy blasts. Dust fell from the ceiling. Red emergency lights flashed through small vents. He could hear shouting and the sharp crack of energy weapons. He reached a grate that opened into a side hall near the royal wing. He looked through carefully. Smoke filled the air. 2 palace guards lay still on the floor. 3 black-armored assassins walked past, scanning every door. Their green helmet lights cut through the haze. Kale waited until they turned a corner. Then he slipped out of the wall and stayed low. His goal was simple. Find Empress Lyra. Tell her the children were safe. Everything else could wait. He moved from shadow to shadow, using the same quiet paths he had cleaned for 3 years. He knew which cameras still worked, and which ones the attackers had already destroyed. He knew which doors stuck, and which ones opened with a soft push. Halfway down a long corridor, he heard soft crying. A young Vayari servant girl sat against the wall, holding her arm. Blue blood stained her sleeve. Her eyes went wide with fear when she saw Kale. He raised one hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said in a low voice. "I'm not with them. Where is the Empress?" The girl pointed with a shaking hand toward the upper gardens. She was heading to the command room, but the main stairs are blocked. The killers are everywhere. Kale nodded. He tore a clean strip from his own shirt and wrapped her arm quickly. "Stay hidden. Crawl into that vent behind you. It leads to the lower kitchens. Go." She stared at him for a second, surprised that a human cleaner would help her, then crawled into the dark vent. Kale kept moving. The upper gardens were a mess of broken glass and burning plants. Soft blue flowers that once glowed under the twin moons now lay crushed. Thick smoke rolled across the open space. In the middle of the chaos stood Empress Lyra. Her silver armor was scorched. A long cut ran across her cheek. 4 royal guards formed a tight circle around her, firing at black shapes that moved through the smoke. An assassin rose from behind a fallen statue and aimed straight at the Empress. One of her guards jumped in front of the shot and fell. Lyra did not scream. She raised her own weapon and fired back with cold precision. Another assassin dropped, but more dark figures closed inches. She was running out of time and out of soldiers. Kale did not think. He ran. He grabbed a heavy piece of broken metal railing from the ground and charged the nearest killer from behind. The metal slammed into the assassin's helmet with a loud crack. The figure staggered. Kale hit him again until he stopped moving. The Empress spun around, weapon raised, ready to shoot the dirty human who had suddenly appeared. Their eyes met. For 1 second the battle seemed to pause. She saw the blood on his arm, the mop water stains on his clothes, and the fierce look in his human eyes. She lowered her weapon just a little. "The children," Kale said between heavy breaths. "Princess Sira and Prince Taven. They are safe. I hid them in the deep foundation room, the one behind the 3 locked doors. No one else knows they are there." Empress Lyra's face changed. The cold battle mask cracked. Pure relief and shock mixed together. "You, the cleaner. You saved them." "Yes," Kale answered simply. "But we have to move. More are coming." A new wave of assassins poured into the garden from 2 sides. Red energy bolts filled the air. One of the last royal guards fell. Lyra grabbed Kale's good arm and pulled him behind a thick stone pillar. Energy shots burned the edges of the stone. Why, she asked quickly while reloading. Why would a human servant risk his life for my children? Kale looked at her. Smoke and fire lit his tired face. Because they are children, he said. And because no one else was there. Something deep shifted in the Empress's eyes. She had ruled for years. She had spoken with kings and admirals. She had never expected those words from the man who mopped her floors. A large explosion rocked the far side of the garden. Part of the glass ceiling crashed down. The remaining assassins used the chaos to push closer. Only 2 royal guards still stood with Lyra. They would not last long. Kale pointed to a half-hidden door behind a row of burning plants. Service stairs. They go down 3 levels and come out near the old medical wing. Most of the killers don't know that path. We can lose them there. Lyra stared at him. How do you know these things? I clean them, Kale said. Every day. She gave a short nod. Lead the way. Kale took point. He moved low and fast, checking every corner the way a man does when he has walked the same halls 1,000 times in silence. The Empress and her 2 guards followed. Energy bolts chased them. One shot grazed Kale's leg and made him stumble, but he kept going. He slammed his hand on a dirty wall panel. A narrow door slid open. They rushed inside and sealed it behind them just as more assassins reached the garden. The service stairs were dark and steep. Emergency lights flickered. The group moved down quickly. Lyra stayed close to Kale. For the first time, she noticed how quietly he walked, how his eyes checked every shadow, how he seemed to know the building better than her own captains. They reached a wide landing. Suddenly, the door above them blew open. 2 assassins dropped down the stairs, firing as they came. The first royal guard turned and shot one of them, but the second killer's bolt hit the guard square in the chest. He fell hard. Kale did not freeze. He grabbed a fire suppression canister from the wall, the kind he had replaced many times, and threw it at the remaining assassin. The canister burst into thick white foam. The killer's visor went blind. Lyra finished him with 1 clean shot. They kept running. The last royal guard covered the rear. When they reached the bottom, Kale led them through a maze of narrow halls filled with pipes and old machines. The air smelled of oil and metal. These were the forgotten parts of the palace, the places only cleaners and repair crews ever saw. At last they came to a heavy door marked with faded medical symbols. Kale opened it. Inside was a small emergency clinic that still had power. He helped the Empress sit on a metal table and found a med kit. His own hands shook as he cleaned the cut on her face and sealed it with a quick bandage. Lyra watched him work. You are hurt worse than I am, she said quietly. Kale glanced at the deep burn on his arm and the new wound on his leg. I'll live. The children are what matter. She reached out and touched his wrist gently, stopping him for a moment. Her blue skin felt cool against his. What is your name? He looked surprised. No highborn Vayari had ever asked his name. Kale, he said. Just Kale. Kale, she repeated, as if the word was important. You will not be just Kale after tonight. Before he could answer, the last royal guard shouted a warning. More footsteps echoed in the outer hall. The assassins had found the lower levels. The door would not hold for long. Lyra stood up, weapon ready again. The soft and grateful look left her face, replaced by the hard eyes of a ruler who still had a palace to save. Can you get us to the command center from here? She asked. Kale nodded. There is a path. It is longer, but they will not expect it. Then we go, she said. And when this is over, the whole empire will know what a human did for my children tonight. Kale picked up a fallen rifle from the floor. It felt strange and heavy in his cleaner's hands, but he held it steady. The man who used to push a mop now walked beside the Empress of the Veyari into the smoke-filled dark, ready to fight for the palace that had never even known his name. The night was far from over. The real fight for the throne and for the future of two races was only getting started. Kale and Empress Lyra moved through the dark lower halls with the last royal guard close behind. The air was thick with smoke and the sharp smell of burned metal. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Every few seconds, the whole palace shook from distant explosions. Kale led them through a narrow passage that ran behind the old water systems. He had cleaned these pipes for years. He knew which valves leaked and which panels opened to hidden crawl spaces. The Empress stayed right behind him. Her silver armor was dirty now. Her long white hair was messy, but her eyes stayed sharp and ready. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Kale raised his hand and they all stopped. Heavy boots echoed from the left tunnel. At least 4 assassins were coming fast. Kale pointed to a low-maintenance hatch near the floor. "In here. Quick." They crawled inside one by one. The space was tight and dark. Kale pulled the hatch shut just as green helmet lights swept the junction. The killers stopped and scanned the area. One of them kicked a loose grate. Another checked the wall panels. Kale held his breath. Little drops of blood from his arm fell silently onto the metal floor of the crawl space. The Empress noticed and pressed a clean cloth against the wound with gentle fingers. She said nothing, but her eyes met his in the dark. For the first time, she looked at him not as a servant, but as a man who had saved her children. The assassins finally moved on. Kale waited an extra minute, then opened the hatch. They climbed out and kept going. After 2 more turns, they reached a wide service elevator that only cleaners and repair crews used. The power was still on. Kale called the elevator. When the doors opened, the last royal guard stepped in first and checked the corners. "Safe." They rode up in silence. The Empress stood close to Kale. She spoke in a low voice. "The deep foundation room. You are sure no one else knows that code?" "I'm sure," Kale answered. "I found it by accident 2 years ago when a cleaning drone got stuck. I never told anyone. The children locked it from the inside. They will stay quiet until you come." Lyra closed her eyes for a short second. When she opened them again, they shone with emotion she rarely showed. "Thank you, Kale. Words are not enough, but thank you." The elevator stopped at high level near the command center. The doors opened onto pure chaos. Smoke poured through broken vents. Bodies of both palace guards and black-armored assassins lay across the shiny floor. The main doors to the command center were half melted. Sparks jumped from damaged wires. 3 assassins stood outside those doors, working on the last locks. They did not hear the elevator. Kale, Lyra, and the royal guard stepped out quietly. The guard took the left side. Lyra took the center. Kale raised the rifle he still carried. His hands were steady even though he had never been a soldier. They fired together. 2 assassins dropped at once. The third spun and shot back. The bolt hit the royal guard in the shoulder and threw him against the wall. Kale kept firing until the last killer fell. The hallway went quiet except for the crackle of fire. Lyra ran to the wounded guard and checked him. He was alive but could not fight anymore. She helped him sit against the wall and gave him a pain injector from her belt. Then she turned to the damaged command center doors. Kale was already at the control panel. He pulled off the cover and twisted 2 wires the way he had fixed broken cleaning machines many times. The door slid open with a tired groan. Inside, the command center was a wreck. Screens flickered. One whole wall was black from an explosion. But 3 loyal officers still stood at their posts, shocked to see the Empress alive and a bloody human cleaner beside her. Status, Lyra ordered at once. One officer, a tall blue-skinned captain named Vex, answered quickly, "Empress, Half the palace is under enemy control. They cut the main power and most of the outer defenses. We still hold the central core and the lower vaults. Reinforcements from the fleet are 30 minutes away. But the assassins are hunting for you and the royal children. Their leader is still inside the palace. Lyra's face hardened. Their leader? Captain Vex pointed to a damaged screen that showed a tall figure in black armor with red marks on the shoulders. He calls himself Reth, former special forces from the old war. He has a personal hatred for your family. He will not leave until he finishes the job. Kale stared at the screen. He had never heard the name, but he felt the danger in it. This was not just a random attack. This was personal. Lyra turned to Kale. You got my children to safety. Now I need one more thing. Can you get me to the secondary defense room? If we can turn the inner turrets back on, we can hold until the fleet arrives. Kale nodded. I know the way. It is through the old servant quarters. Most of those halls are still clear. Captain Vex looked at Kale with open surprise. Who is this human? This human, Lyra said clearly, saved the future of the Empire tonight. His name is Kale. You will treat him with respect. The officers stood a little straighter. Kale felt heat rise in his face. He was not used to anyone saying his name with honor. He only nodded once and moved toward the side exit. They left the wounded guard with the officers and headed into the servant halls. These corridors were simpler, with plain walls and soft floor mats. Kale had mopped them every week. Now they were empty and dark. The only light came from small emergency strips along the floor. Halfway to the defense room, a loud blast shook the floor. Part of the ceiling caved in ahead of them. Dust and broken stone blocked the path. Through the hole in the wall, they could see the grand central atrium of the palace. Fires burned on 3 levels. Black-armored figures moved like shadows across the open space. And in the middle of the atrium stood Reth himself. Tall, calm. His black armor had red marks like dried blood. He held a heavy rifle in one hand and looked up toward the higher floors as if he owned the building. Lyra's hand tightened on her weapon. That is him. Reth's helmet turned slowly. Even from a distance, it felt like he was looking straight at their broken wall. He raised one hand and pointed. At once 6 more assassins ran toward their position. Move, Kale shouted. They ran down a side hall as energy bolts smashed into the walls behind them. Kale led Lyra through a laundry room, then through a small kitchen, then into a narrow stairwell that smelled of soap and old water. He could hear the assassins gaining. Their boots were loud and fast. At the top of the stairs, Kale pushed open a door into a long glass walkway that crossed over the atrium. It was a risk, but it was the only way left to the defense room. They started across. Below them, Reth watched. He raised his rifle and fired. The first shot cracked the glass near Kale's feet. The second shot shattered a whole panel. Wind and smoke rushed inches. Lyra fired back while running. Her shots forced Reth to step behind a pillar. Kale grabbed her arm and pulled her the last 20 steps as more glass exploded around them. They dove through the far door just as the walkway began to collapse. They rolled into a dark hall and came up ready to fight. No one followed immediately. The broken walkway had bought them a little time. Both of them were breathing hard. Small cuts from flying glass marked their faces and hands. Lyra looked at Kale. Blood ran down his temple now, mixing with the dirt and sweat. He still held the rifle like a man who refused to quit. She spoke softly but with steel in her voice. When this night ends, Kale, you will never mop another floor in this palace. I swear it on my children. Kale gave a tired half-smile. Let's just stay alive first. Empress. They turned together and ran toward the secondary defense room. Behind them, in the burning atrium, Reth began to climb. The leader of the assassins was coming for them personally. And the human who had once been nobody was the only person standing between the Empress and the end of her line. Kale and Empress Lyra reached the secondary defense room just as more explosions shook the palace. The door was sealed with a heavy lock. Kale dropped to one knee and pulled open the side panel. His fingers moved fast over the wires. He had fixed the same kind of lock many times when cleaning crews got stuck after hours. The lock clicked open. They rushed inside and sealed the door behind them. The room was small but full of screens and control boards. Most of the screens still worked. One large window looked out over the burning central atrium far below. Fires painted everything orange and red. Black-armored assassins moved like ants across the lower floors. Lyra ran straight to the main console. Her hands flew over the controls. The inner turrets are offline. If I can restart them, we can clear the lower levels before the fleet arrives. Kale stood by the door with the rifle ready. His wounded arm throbbed. Blood had soaked through the cloth the Empress had given him earlier. He ignored it. "How long do you need?" 2 minutes, she said. "Maybe less." Those 2 minutes felt like hours. Heavy boots pounded in the hallway outside. Something slammed against the door. Then again. The metal dented. Kale fired 3 shots through the door. Someone on the other side shouted in painches. The slamming stopped for a moment. Lyra's fingers never stopped moving. Lights on the console turned from red to yellow to green. "Almost there," she said through clenched teeth. The door exploded inward. 3 assassins charged through the smoke. Kale shot the first one in the chest. The second one fired, and the bolt burned across Kale's side. Pain exploded through his body, but he stayed on his feet and kept shooting. The second killer fell. The third one rushed him with a blade. Kale caught the assassin's arm, and they crashed into a control board. Sparks flew. The blade cut Kale's shoulder. He drove his knee into the killer's stomach and fired his rifle at close range. The body dropped. Lyra finished the last command. Outside the large window, dozens of hidden turrets woke up along the palace walls. Bright blue beams of energy sliced through the atrium. Assassins ran for cover, but many did not make it. The lower floors lit up with clean, precise fire. Lyra turned with a fierce light in her eyes. "It is done. The inner defenses are ours again." Before they could catch their breath, calm voice came from the broken doorway. "Impressive, but not enough." Reth stepped into the room. His black armor with red marks was scratched, but still strong. He held a heavy rifle in one hand and a glowing blade in the other. He looked bigger in person. Cold, sure of himself. 2 more assassins stood behind him. "Empress Lyra," Reth said. His voice was deep and smooth through the helmet speaker. "You should have died with your husband years ago. Tonight I finish the bloodline. Where are the children?" Lyra raised her weapon. "You will never touch them." Reth's helmet turned toward Kale. "And you, the human cleaner. You have caused me more trouble than all her guards. I will kill you slowly for that." Kale wiped blood from his mouth and lifted his rifle. His body screamed in pain, but his voice stayed steady. "You can try." Reth moved first. He was fast, faster than any normal soldier. He fired while closing the distance. Lyra dove behind a console. Kale rolled to the side and shot back. One of the assassins behind Reth dropped. The second one fired at Lyra and forced her to stay low. Reth reached Kale in seconds. He swung the glowing blade. Kale blocked with his rifle. The blade cut the weapon in half. Hot sparks burned Kale's hands. He stumbled back. Reth kicked him hard in the chest. Kale flew into the wall and slid to the floor. Pain filled his world. Lyra stood up and fired. Her shots hit Reth's armor but did not break it. Reth turned and threw a small disc at her. The disc stuck to her console and exploded. The blast threw Lyra across the room. She hit the floor and did not get up right away. Reth walked toward her slowly. "Your empire ends tonight." Kale pushed himself up. Blood ran into his eyes. He could barely stand. He looked around for anything he could use. His eyes landed on the large window that overlooked the atrium. Then he saw the emergency release lever on the wall. The same kind of lever he had cleaned and oiled many times. One pull would blow the whole window outward. He did not think. He ran. Reth heard him and turned, raising the blade. Kale slammed his body into the lever with everything he had left. Warning lights flashed. The thick glass window exploded outward with a roar. Wind and smoke rushed into the room. Reth staggered as the floor tilted from the blast. Kale charged him. They crashed together near the open edge. The glowing blade cut deep into Kale's leg. Kale did not let go. He drove both of them closer to the drop. Far below, the atrium burned like a pit of fire. "You are nothing," Reth growled. "Just a floor mopper." Kale's face was inches from the assassin's helmet. His voice was raw. "I was nobody, but I still stopped you." He twisted with the last of his strength. Both of them went over the edge. They fell. Wind tore at them. Fire and smoke rushed past. Reth tried to stab him again in midair. Kale held on to the blade arm with one hand and punched the helmet with the other. They slammed into a lower walkway hard enough to break it. The walkway collapsed. They fell again, crashing through burning decorations and broken glass. They hit a stone balcony 3 levels down. The impact was brutal. Kale felt something break in his side. Reth's armor cracked open across the chest. The assassin's helmet flew off. For the first time, Kale saw the face underneath. Hard, scarred, full of hate. Reth still tried to rise. Kale grabbed a heavy piece of fallen stone and brought it down on the assassin's head with both hands. Once, twice, Reth stopped moving. Kale dropped the stone and fell to his knees. He could not breathe well. Blood was everywhere. The palace still burned around him, but the turrets continued to fire. The remaining assassins were in full retreat. In the distance, he heard the deep roar of arriving fleet ships. Reinforcements had come. He looked up at the broken window high above. Empress Lyra stood there, holding her side, staring down at him. Even from far away, he could see the shock and something deeper on her face. Kale tried to smile. Then his strength left him, and he fell forward onto the cold stone. The last thing he heard before the dark took him was the sound of many boots running toward him, and a woman's voice shouting his name. "Kale, stay with me. Kale." Kale woke up slowly. Soft blue light touched his face. The air smelled clean again. For a moment he thought he was back in the servant quarters, late for his morning shift. Then the pain arrived. His whole body hurt. His arm, his side, his leg, everything felt heavy and wrapped. He opened his eyes. He was not on his thin servant bed. He lay in a wide medical room with white walls and gentle machines that hummed quietly. An IV line ran into his hand. Bandages covered most of his upper body. A soft voice spoke near him. "He is awake." Empress Lyra sat in a chair beside the bed. She no longer wore battle armor. Instead, she wore a simple silver robe. A thin bandage rested on her cheek. Her long white hair was neat again, but her eyes looked tired and full of emotion. When she saw Kale looking at her, she stood and came closer. "You foolish, brave human," she said quietly. "You jumped off a building with the most dangerous killer in the sector." Kale tried to speak. His voice came out rough. "The children." Lyra's face softened into a real smile. "Safe. Both of them. They are waiting outside. They refuse to leave the medical wing," until you woke up. The door opened. Little Princess Sira and Prince Tavan ran in. Their blue skin glowed under the lights. Their white hair bounced as they moved. Sira reached the bed first and carefully took Kale's hand. "You saved us," she said. "Mother told us everything." Tavan climbed onto the edge of the bed with a serious look on his small face. "I want to be strong like you when I grow up." Kale felt something tight in his chest that had nothing to do with his broken ribs. He had spent years as a shadow in this palace. Now 2 royal children looked at him like he was a hero. Lyra gently guided the children back a step. "Let him rest. You can visit again later." She kissed the tops of their heads and a nurse led them out. When the door closed, the room grew quiet. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, she just looked at Kale. "The fleet arrived 20 minutes after you fell. The last assassin surrendered or died. Reth is gone. You ended him." Kale stared at the ceiling. "I was just trying to keep them alive." "You did far more than that," she said. "You showed my people something we had forgotten. We looked at humans and saw only workers. Cleaners. Servants. We never looked closer. Tonight the entire palace watched a human who owed us nothing risk everything for 2 children who were not even his own kind." She reached out and took his hand carefully, avoiding the bandages. "I meant what I said on that walkway. You will never mop another floor in this palace. From this day, you are under my personal protection. You will have rooms in the residential wing, full medical care, and any training or education you want. If you wish to leave and return to human space, I will give you a ship and enough credits to live well for the rest of your life. The choice is yours." Kale was silent for a long time. He thought about the years of silence, the way nobles had walked past him, the way no one had ever said his name. Then he thought about the children's hands in the dark tunnel, and the way the Empress had trusted him when it mattered most. "I think," he said slowly, "I would like to stay, but not as a cleaner. Maybe I can help with palace security. I know every tunnel and every weak door. Someone should fix those before the next attack." Lyra laughed softly. It was a warm, real sound. Security advisor to the Empress. It has a good sound. Consider it done. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the twin moons shone over the repaired sections of the palace. Workers and soldiers moved together, clearing debris. For the first time, humans and Vayari worked side by side without orders. Word of what Kale had done had already spread through every hall. Lyra looked back at him. "There is one more thing. Tomorrow I will address the entire empire. I will tell them the truth about this night. I will tell them that a human named Kale saved the royal children, while most of us were still running to our posts. Some will not like it. Old pride dies hard. But they will hear it anyway." Kale nodded once. He felt tired again, but it was a different kind of tired. The kind that came after a long fight finally ended. Lyra walked back to the bed and placed a small silver badge on the table beside him. It carried the royal crest. "This marks you as a friend of the throne. No one will ever treat you as nobody again." She paused at the door. "Rest now, Kale. You have earned it. And thank you for my children." When she left, the room was quiet except for the soft machines. Kale looked at the silver badge. He picked it up with his good hand and held it under the light. It felt heavier than it looked. He closed his eyes. In the darkness, he no longer saw dirty floors and endless halls. He saw 2 small blue faces smiling at him, and an Empress who had learned his name. The man who had once been nobody had become something else entirely. And the Empire would never see humans the same way again. What no one expected was the quiet change that followed. Weeks later, other human workers across Vayari space began to stand a little taller. Some asked for better treatment. Some were given real chances for the first time. The story of the floor mopper who saved the Empress's children traveled farther than any official message. It became proof that courage does not care about rank or race. The real twist was never the fight. It was that one ordinary man, ignored by everyone, forced an entire empire to look in the mirror and finally see the people they had stepped over for years. If this opened your eyes to how much one person can matter, you are going to love what happens next in this universe. Tonight we saw that heroes are not always soldiers or kings. Sometimes they are the quiet ones holding a mop, the ones no one notices until the moment everything falls apart. Kale showed us that knowing the small paths, staying calm, and choosing to protect the weak can change the fate of an empire. If you felt something during this story, hit that like button. It tells me you want more HFY stories just like this. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. And if you want even deeper stories and early access, check the link in the description for our newsletter. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done if you were in Kale's place that night? Would you have hidden, or would you have climbed those tunnels with nothing but a tool in your hand? I read every comment. Let me know. Thanks for watching. Stay human. Stay strong. I will see you in the next story.